Okay,
And it's
fine.
live.
That's a great beginning, guys.
Well, that's just
Okay,
great, I guess.
right. So let's just announce ourselves, I guess. I'm Snow. There's Nox and
Hello.
Per.
Hi, I'm Storm. Sturmwalzer.
Hi
And
everyone. I'm Nox, the other host.
Other host.
right. Well,
What?
today we're going to
I'm
be
the other
talking
host.
to. Be quiet. Let me announce. So today we're going to be talking to Sturm, who's the current #1 holder. Shut up! I'm trying to talk.
Who is talking?
We're off to a good start.
What? Yeah, that's just great. Snow is like talking to the voices in her head.
Wait, no. I'm hearing things.
Yeah, and that's a problem. That's helpful, that's,
They have the YouTube stream on.
Oh my god, I'm so confused. Okay, now I got it all figured out. I was like, what if fellas? Okay. Sorry.
Yes?
Okay. I'm sorry.
Reset. Restart.
No, what happened was
So-
like it came on in 3 different like windows, just like because I had it on in Royal Road and I had it. Anyways, right. So Sturm, talk about your fic. Tell us about why you're #1.
I don't know.
What?
Guess people like it. I mean,
Well, you're at it. Tell me the secret to life and death and what happens after we die, no?
Wait, we already did that last time though.
Yeah, we know the
Wait,
answer.
what?
Probably true.
Anyway, come on, Sturm. So, where are you from? There. How about that? You're obviously German, but you know.
yeah, kind of. I'm from Germany. That should be enough, shouldn't it?
Yeah,
South
I guess.
Germany, if it helps.
No,
South
we
Germany.
wonder how's the address. People
I
want you.
actually don't think we really needed to ask something like that.
Should I post a
It feels
picture
more
of
like
my house,
not-
maybe my room?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be interesting.
I think you should show us where you live on Google Maps.
Yeah, and maybe the
Yeah,
times when I'm
of course,
not at
yeah,
home,
right.
like that, or
So
when
the
I'm at
other
home.
authors can pay him a visit, right?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, so why don't you give us like a quick summary of what your story's about? Because a lot of people maybe, I don't know a lot of people, but some people haven't read it maybe, you know?
I have.
Yeah, just like the aforementioned Nox, no, maybe.
Yeah, okay, quick warning, gonna spoil like the first, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 chapters. It's about a guy who had a pretty rough, yeah, not childhood, but teenagehood in that sense, from when his parents died and he went to an orphanage and lost contact to his old friends, but he isolated himself, but kind of pulled himself up. He went to the army and went to college. It looked pretty good for him. He was mostly by himself, kind of a loner, but not weak in a psychological or physiological sense. Then in the college, he met his childhood friend, a girl, and he reconnected. It looked pretty good for him. And then a company named Sphinx started the game Novus Vita, and it's a virtual reality game. I mean, it's VR MMO, like 30% of other fics on RoyalRoad. And in the world we're in, virtual reality has a big part plays a big part in everyone's life. It's much greater than just one game. It's not like in Royal Road in LMS, where it's just the first game. There have been others, other VR experiences, and it is part of life, part of reality in this sense. It's like Facebook times 10,000. And in that game, they started to play out together, but well, that's the second or third chapter, I'm not sure anymore. She betrayed him and crushed him, but he first of all he freaked out because he trusted her and nobody else in the world, and she betrayed him. That's kind of pushed him. I've seen a nice discussion on Reddit about that actually a couple of days ago. It was kind of nice. And yeah, and then he starts figuring out the game, and because it's so important, it ties into the work world, it ties into the social world, it ties into everything, the society, and so he starts figuring out how it works. ties relationships in the game and gets kind of badass. I hope at least that's what happens. Yeah. So if you want to read it, go read it. It's not bad, I guess. And it becomes hopefully better because, as I said, it's my first story and the start is somewhat rough. But I hope the writing got better because I put kind of a lot of time into improving. So I hope it showed. Okay. Now what?
Well, I'm waiting for Nock to say something, but I guess it's me. Well, how does your writing process go? Like, everyone writes differently. Like, do you have the whole story planned ahead, or do you write it chapter by chapter? How do you do it?
Oh, quick interjection, Rec. I'm gonna answer this soon. I'm just gonna answer Snow's first. My writing process is for those who are only listening and not seeing the chat, the guy just asked a question in chat. Now, my writing process. I have a basic concept ready of how the story progresses. I actually know about 100,000 words in the future. I have a soft ending prepared. In theory, it leaves room for a continuation, sequel, but in theory, I have the whole story figured out, just with a few milestones in between. But I usually have to fill this room, and it actually takes a lot of time. For example, no, I can't take that example because it will spoil a lot. But yeah, you can guess I haven't prepared here anything. It's just improvising. So I'm usually just going with my gut a little bit and have something prepared in the back of my hand. It's just kind of 50-50. But I'm mostly, even when I'm sitting on my computer and have to write, I'm still thinking about what could happen next. And when I have a cool idea, or I think it is a cool idea, I have to rewrite a couple of hundred words. But I'm not one who plans everything out. I have as I said, a basic skeleton prepared, and I'm filling it with flesh as I go along, which sounded kind of creepy, but okay. Yeah, and if you guys want, I could.
So,
Requisition made a question, and he asked, "What did you base Hall's personality on? Did you base it on yourself, or did you just decide some traits and went from there?"
I thought at the beginning I just kind of went with what I knew from the community and how they. I mean, it says know your readers, and because I've been on RoyalRoadL a while before, I knew what. Yeah, I like you, JC. What people liked, and so I thought, hey, I have to make this really tough, strong guy. But by now I'm kind of not that satisfied anymore because I think I made him too strong at the beginning, not flawed enough in this sense. Because I mean, the characters have flaws, of course, and he has some too, but he's a little too good at the beginning, and but that's a problem with stories you release chapters by chapter by chapter. It's not perfect at the beginning. I could change it now, but this would give people who start now a different experience, a different reading experience than those who stuck with me from the beginning. So I don't really want to do that. I may do it at the end when I have like 3 complete volumes, each 90,000 words done. I mean, like 3 books. Then I might go back and change the whole thing. Not the whole thing, but like 10%, or I'll do a little Deus Ex Machina. I do a little more hardship. I do a little less, I don't know, relationship. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, so I remember you talking about a while ago on chat. Well, pretty much everyone comes to Royal Road to improve their writing. So you started a while ago. Do you feel like you improved yourself or something like? And if you did, like, what helped you get better? The reviews, other authors, like, what do you use to improve yourself?
At the beginning, I just wrote, but as I said, I've tried to improve myself by talking with others here on Royal Road on chat. I've shared, with. I'm trying to read the chat and talking just doesn't work. I'm sorry, guys. I hope the mods are reading the chat, because if I try to read the chat plus and talking, it really doesn't work.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm keeping a look on questions. I'll ask them later.
If something's important, please tell me, because sorry, guys, it's just confusing. There are countless sources on the internet where you can find tips on writing, on how to improve yourself, on which verbs to use, which not to use, how to punctuate dialogue, or how to write dialogue, and that helped a lot too. But same as I've talked with really a lot of people from RoyalRoadL here, as I said, other authors, and read every review I get, and I try to, if it's helpful, I try to incorporate everything I get from correction of typos. That, for example, that's already very helpful. If people correct my typos, I'm really grateful for that already. Or give me some ideas. I mean, people talked a lot. For example, those who know my story, a lot of them talked about the weapons, or the weapon setup, or the skills. It's kind of cool. It's also really gratifying to see how people really think about the stuff you write. It's very nice. So, but the most important part about improving is actually simply writing. You need to incorporate the things you read into your writing. I mean, for example, I read a very interesting article, I think it was Stephen King, about the use of adverbs in speech tags, and why not to do it, or general use of adverbs. And it's one thing to read about it, but you have to put it into action. So it's not always that easy, but in the end, it's all practice. Yeah.
So
And I hope I have improved by now. From my perspective, it's difficult to say, of course, but in my opinion, my writing got somewhat better than it was.
Yeah, from what I read on your first chapters, I read a few of them, and I read your short story a few days ago, and it was a really great improvement. Really great.
Thanks.
So I have a question. Who are your biggest inspirations when writing? I mean, which authors do you recommend people to check out to say something similar or, well, better? I don't know how you rate yourself there.
Yeah, I'm actually not that big on remembering the authors' names, because I've read so many books over the past, I don't know, 20 years or 15 years. I don't know when I started reading. It was when I was like 10 or 12 or something like that. I often forget. I mean, there are some authors that stick with you. For example, I talked with you about it now. Recently, Patrick Rothfuss, or Rothfuss, or however you pronounce them, with his Kingkiller Chronicles. He's a great author. His writing is not perfect, but it's flawed. But in its flaws, it's kind of like music. I really like his style. And then there's Brandon Sanderson. But there are also German authors. I mean, I've only the last few years really read English stuff. My English before I was 19 or something like that really sucked. Or before I was 20. I mean, 5 years ago I barely could watch an English show. But in German authors, it's Markus Heinz, I'm not sure right now, and Wolfgang Holbein, for example, who accompanied me when I was younger, from early teens. Wolfgang Holbein is a great author for early teens, with mix of mystery and thriller and fantasy in modern times. Is really great. I've never been really big on crime or general thriller like Tom Clancy or even Dan Brown. I mean, I've read a few of those things just because they were so popular. They are rather important to general. It's almost general knowledge to read them. It's like Lord of the Rings. you don't have to read. Lord of the Rings is incredibly important for fantasy in general, but it's not the most exciting story to read. I remember I was like 13, 14 when I read it because that's when the movies came out, and I wanted to read the story before watching the movies. But it's from today's perspective, it's much more enjoyable to read modern stuff. So yeah, but lately, for example, I've also not only read those Sanderson wrote for those important authors, but of course switched to light novels and, as I said, LMS, ARC, I don't know, a few others on Bakatsuki and stuff like that. Just get into contact with them. I've read a few Wuxia novels or Xiangxi or whatever they're called, like Coiling Dragon. I've read a little bit Desolate Era. I think it's important to diversify yourself, not just maybe stick to one single thing, because it's for example, I've not only read a lot, I watch a lot of TV shows like I don't know, Person of Interest, I don't know, just to get a grip on story and storytelling or stuff like that.
Is Don't Fear the Reaper the only thing you've ever written?
It's the. I mean, of course, you write stuff in school. I mean, like it's high school in Germany. It's Gymnasium. You write book reports, but interpretation of poems. Come again?
Creatively, though?
No, I never wrote anything. Don't Fear the Reaper is actually the first stuff I've ever written.
How come you chose to write in English instead of German?
Although Don't Fear the Reaper is the only thing I've ever written, I've been thinking about it a lot, and I actually always wanted to write a book because, you know, many people talk about, yeah, I want to write at one point, and it's been years. I think for 3 years I said I want to write a book. Because I really like to tell stories and I have so many stories in my head. But then I thought I want people to read my stuff, and then I read LMS. Then I never read fan fiction before, for example, but then I stumbled on RoyalRoadL. At some point I had no more. I was finished with LMS, and I started fan fiction. And I thought at some point I could contribute to the community and get better at writing before I start a real thing. But then I had to write in English because nobody reads in German on RoyalRoadL. Or there are a few stories and I appreciate them, but they're only getting a small audience. And I try to get feedback to improve myself, and I thought I have to get a bigger audience for that. So I stuck with English.
That makes sense. Okay. Oh, yeah, and I wanted to ask, do you still read stories on RoyalRoad?
I actually do, but not as many as I used to.
Which ones do you follow?
I would have to check on the best rated list. Wait a second. I have to catch up on Weekend's Universe Online. That was pretty fascinating, but I didn't have the time to immerse myself because it's a relatively complicated story, and I wanted to give it the attention it deserves. I've read Ages Online. I've read The Game was pretty fascinating. What else? I've read your story, for example. It was pretty good.
Thank you.
I don't know. As the beginning of Long Island, for example, was very cool. Scott something has a few pretty interesting novels. I'm usually just I check RoyalRoadL pretty often, and I just once a day I go to latest updates and check the list and see if anything interesting pops up. Then I read it. I haven't anything unfollowed actually on my account, so I don't follow anything per se. But if something catches my interest, or if I'm pretty often in the chat, and sometimes people ask me to read their stories, and if I'm sometimes do. I'm not always doing it. It's because my time is very limited, and so I don't read everything. But sometimes I do. For example, I don't know. I read stuff, and yeah. For example, now no longer a game. I think it's number 4. I read that till like chapter 20. I need to catch up at some point because it was pretty cool. The same with Naughty Hippie. I didn't like Relovely because of the theme in it, but it was really well written, and he wrote Wayward Soul. That's like a Mother of Learning, Groundhog Day fiction. That was pretty cool. So yeah, I'm reading stories too, but not too many because I simply don't have time. I often just, when I'm on the computer, I could read. I try to write a little bit. Yeah.
Ox, your turn.
We have a couple questions from the chat. One of them is from Requisition. He asked, when you write, you have a few characters, Hal, Lily, Moira, etc. Unlike a lot of fictions, they are not flat, even though they are supporting characters. Do you try to view the story from each point of view to write or something?
I didn't get that. Can you repeat that, please?
When you write, you have quite a few characters, Hal, Lily, Moira, etc. Unlike a lot of fictions, they are not flat, even though they are supporting characters. Do you try to view the stories from each point of view?
Oh, if I have if I want to present the story from each point of view, was that the question? The last part.
No, he wants to know how do you write from each point of view that makes the character not look flat but have a personality, even though they are supporting characters. How do you do that?
Apart from a few, I don't really write from their point of view. I only write from the MCs. Of course, I read from like I think 4 or 5 separate point of views out there, but I often try to create the world they're in. I mean, it's difficult to say. I try to give them flaws, and I just try to think, what do they do? I mean, it's I don't actually think that much about it. I just do it. I mean, I know there's actually one thing I'm still trying to figure out. This was the character creation and world building. I'm still working on that. But yeah, I think characters have to have a past, and it's like a story. You have a name to it, but then you try to fill it with a past, with experiences, and you don't have to necessarily write them all. But I think it helps if you know them. You know, for example, for example, the Moira. This was one of the characters the Rec mentioned. She has currently a lot more past, or how she got into the situation she's currently in, than I wrote so far. I know a lot more about her than the readers so far. Of course, I will tell him at some point, but just creating the past and the experience of the character can create, to some degree, the current personality.
I see.
If my
So
answers
you
are
create
way too long.
No, it's quite good actually. So you make a background story for the character, so you have a grasp of how he sees the world or she sees the world, and use that to write.
Exactly, I do. Yeah.
If you had this, if you had like this point, something like where you want to improve, like reading your own things, is there anything that you can say, okay, this is something I need to improve on?
Actually, yeah. At the beginning, for example, I thought I had to improve on the dialogue, but I think I got that a little bit better by now. What still is not great is the villains. I think they lack somewhat personality. I've read a few reviews about that too. They told me the same thing, and I agree to a certain degree. At the beginning, I actually didn't want to make them too fleshed out, take too much spotlight in quotes from the MC, from the main character, because I mean, I was still totally inexperienced. I mean, I'm still an amateur now, but at the beginning I didn't really trust myself to create decent villains in a thing, and then I went with a kind of Lord of the Rings, a kind of Harry Potter character, like Voldemort or the Emperor in Star Wars, who's just in the background, who just doesn't really appear. But by now, I think I should flesh them a little bit more out, and that's what I kind of tried in. Actually, the last chapter has a few point of views from, in quotes, the villains, and I think somewhere in chapter 11.5 where point of views too, to flesh them a little more out. And I'm actually, I don't know if I can tell that because it's not really a spoiler. It's foreshadowed long enough. So if you really don't want to know, skip the next 50 seconds. I'm actually currently trying to introduce a new villain, but it's not really clear. I mean, it's kind of clear for most probably who's going to be, but it wasn't named yet in that sense. So I'm trying to create a new one just to make it a little more fleshed out. Yeah. And,
so the Darth Vader to your Emperor Palpatine.
It's pretty close, actually. Yeah, it's a very good comparison. Yeah.
So we've got a question from Rek. Actually, he wants to clarify what he intended to ask with the other question. Besides the backstory of the characters, do you use character sheets as well, where we write down traits and relationships and I don't know what else?
Actually, no. I know you should do it. But the problem is, actually, at the beginning I had no idea Don't Fear the Reaper would be this popular. Really, no idea. I had dozens of story in my head, but because I thought it was kind of my first story, I didn't think a lot of people would read it. So I started out with just an idea in my head, and I just started writing. And I didn't even take the time to make any sheets, anything at all. The only thing and then it kind of got this blown up, and then I was just writing, and now I could do it probably, but I'm rather lazy, and so I have most characters I just have in my head. I am pretty good at remembering this stuff. I have stories, I remember stories I planned like 2 years ago, never wrote down anything, but still pretty fresh in my head. Yeah, I mean, I can't remember names for the love of my mind. I mean, I see a person once, forget him in 5 minutes, but somehow can't remember the stuff. And if I can't, I just go back to the chapters, reread the stuff I wrote, so I don't get plot holes or something, or my inaccuracies in my character, so they don't act out of character.
Since this is coming back, I want to ask you: do you actually plan on going back and fixing your mistakes and just polishing up your story, or do you want to just keep going on for now?
Yeah, as I said before, for now I just plan to go on. I mean, I'm gonna fix mistakes like typos. I'm gonna fix partially grammar. I'm gonna fix or translation errors when I use, for example, a word from another language. But even that, not necessarily. If it fits, I'm mostly gonna stick with it.
Yeah, but what I mean is basically more like the details and just polishing.
Yeah, I'm not gonna change the story because in the end, I could change the story and then I have two different base points, and I have to somehow make them go in one direction when they should split. You know, my new readers would have a different kind of view maybe on the past than my old readers. And I kind of don't want that because, as I said before, I'm gonna write until at one point I'm satisfied, and then I'm gonna go back. So for now I'm gonna write at least a while, and then I'm gonna go back and fix a lot of things. Just as I said, for example, the MC who's just a little bit too pretty boy-like, and yeah, maybe not rush through the first chapter like I did, because yeah, as I said, I rushed through his backstory, for example. I didn't like that. I'm gonna fix stuff like this, but not right now. I'm gonna take my time with it, and I mean, my update speed is slow enough as it is, and this would just take more time out of that. Yeah.
So one more question from the audience. Did you plan the ending already, and how many arcs you're making? And such.
I do plan the ending. I have the ending planned more or less. I have this next arc is. I mean, it's obvious. It's Civil War arc. I know Evan just stole that from me, or generally, so the Civil War arc from me. The next. This is with this concluded. I'm gonna probably add one larger arc in it, but that's a really big arc, and within probably 2 or 3 smaller ones. So I have the ending planned. I mean, it's actually with the quests he already got at the beginning. It's kind of tied to that. I mean,
Are you spoiling your own story right now?
No, it's in the story. I did it at the beginning. The quests are in there. He got quests at the beginning that kind of foreshadow where it's going. It's not necessarily gonna end there, but it's a path that's visible. It's not like I'm driving in the dark. There is a path there.
So like Weed's sculptor quest from the beginning. Somewhat.
I really don't know anymore. I've read Moonlight Sculptor like a year ago, the last time probably. I really can't remember anything from it. And I rushed through it because I liked it, but I really can't remember anything from it. Except for things.
So someone is asking a question about skills. How do you create them? Do you try to balance them, or since it's a complex world, you just assign them to characters you see fit?
They should fit. It's actually a little bit of a weird process, because some of you might know most skill names, not all of them, are based on songs in the rock genre or metal genre. Like Bad Moon Rising is from Creedence Clearwater Revival, or I don't know, Angels Don't Kill is a skill, or Ain't No Grave Can Hold My Body Down, stuff like that. Those are skills in my time of dying, from all kinds of bands, from Elvis to Led Zeppelin and all kinds of. And at the beginning, I actually had a few songs in mind, and I actually fitted the skills on that, but changed them to fit the story, to not make them OP, or but mostly I had skills in mind. I thought, okay, what could fit? What could make sense in the context of his class? And then I had the skill in mind, what would happen. Try to balance it to a certain degree so it wouldn't be too overpowered. I mean, it's of course the character is strong. I think most people enjoy reading about a stronger character. So I of course made him strong because I want people to enjoy it, and it's more enjoyable for me to write it too. So I create the skill. Partially I just sit and think of the skill, and then I actually go read lists of songs of stuff I like, or just listen to music and just try to think of something that would fit. So it's actually a pretty complicated process sometimes. It's, generally names are pretty big effort to often fit names for the stuff I have, because I can't just pull them out from where the sun doesn't shine, you know.
Do you have an example?
Actually, the most for example, except for the chapter 1 title, it's called The Road So Far. That's a reference to Supernatural. All my chapters are have song names, and same with quests and stuff. And for example, chapter 20. It's called Then the Shade. It took me probably 2 hours. I sat on the computer and it took me 2-3 hours just to figure out that one name, because I couldn't put any name, couldn't put anything on the chapter that would fit. And then I went with Dan and the Shade because he got this skill. I can't tell it because it would be a spoiler. Damn it.
No offense to your story and your titles, but shouldn't you be spending that time writing?
I should probably, but it's not like I sit in front of my. I know sometimes I actually do sit in front of my computer and go through lists, but I think I personally enjoy it if a story has a gimmick like that. And I know for many people it's not important, but in the end, I want the story to have a few special gimmicks in that kind of sense, a few references, because I really enjoy it if a story has something like that. And it makes it more memorable, I think. I bet most people didn't even notice this.
No, I understand. I was just joking. Okay, well, something I want to know before Kurt goes on about questions on chat is how did you become number one? Do you remember how was it? Was it overnight, or was it a process?
Actually, as I did in the beginning, I wrote a few chapters. I think 3, 4, or 5 chapters. I don't know, and had them on retainer. And then I, even if you look at it now, I think I posted the first 3 chapters within 24 hours. And wait a sec. And something weird. My sound from a YouTube video just started. I was a little bit confused for a second. Sorry. Where was I?
That's what happened to me earlier. I understand.
Yeah, exactly. I posted chapters so with in mind that it would stick to the front page, so people would get to read it. But then I had, of course, my chapters were done, and my vacation was done, for example. I just didn't have the time to write anymore. But at that point, because the well, other stories, there weren't that many out there at the beginning. I mean, I started in, I think, 30th of August last year, and there was just not that many stories out there like there is today. I think there was 10 chapters a day maybe, but now there are 30 or 40 or even more, I don't know. And you could get easier to the top, and I'm grateful to my fans because they put me there, but I think it's also a lot of luck that I'm number one, because I just was number one from the beginning, and if you're not that familiar with Royal Road, you're just gonna go to the best rated list and then pick your stories from there. And currently the top 5 is on the front page anyway, and so if you're number one, you have a huge advantage at from the start. I'm not gonna say my story is number one because it's the best story ever, because that's just not true. But it's popular, I was lucky, it's not bad, and it's just a lot of things coming together. And I hope it's also because I'm constantly trying to improve, make my story better than it already is. I hope that is a big part of why I'm number one. I'm of course not sure that's true, but I like to believe that.
So, any more questions? So I can ask chat questions again.
Yeah, ask.
So, I think Lenny asked if once you finish the story, are you going to look into publishing, into a hardcover or online publishing or something?
I mean, it's not like I have not thought about it, because I mean, it would be pretty cool. But it's also not like I'm putting too much hope into it. I have a degree, I have a job in Pipapo. That's a German thing we say. I don't know if Pipapo is something other countries do. I don't know. It means other stuff. And yeah, I would really like if I could be lucky enough to publish anything at some point. But I am realistic enough to know that with my current skill, I probably am not good enough. I would say that, but I just remembered 50 Shades of Grey and stuff like that. That's and that's published too. So I would like it. I probably will try it, because if you're not trying it, nothing will happen. So at some point, if I have enough for Don't Fear the Reaper, for example, to make 3 full books. Currently, I think I could fill like 2, not really 2, but close to 2. When the Civil War arc is done, I could probably fill 2 books with 200 to 300 pages each. Probably pretty easily. Paperback, not even hardcover. So what I'm then gonna do is probably, as I said before, go back, revise, re-edit, and then maybe I'm gonna try to either publish it myself on Amazon, or actually get a publisher. I mean, it's difficult because I would have to get a publisher in USA, and I don't live in the USA. I don't. I mean, my English is okay, but I'm sure you hear it. It's not. It has a grave influence from my German accent, so it's far from the native talker level. Not only talking, but I think writing too. It's still different. I'm lucky enough.
No. Actually, you're not quite right about that. Like, I'm living in the UK. Most English speakers are way below your level, especially your writing skills are way higher than most people I've met here. So.
Ouch.
Yeah,
Don't say you're. No, I'm just talking generally about my experience here.
Well, yeah. I think I'm the only native English speaker on this row here, so I feel a little bit hurt.
Well, sorry about that.
Yeah, but as I said, it would be really cool. I mean, who doesn't dream of it to make the hobby the thing they make their money with later? You know, if I could earn my living with writing, it would be greatest thing ever. But it's not like I built on that hope, on that little hope, on that thought. It just would be nice, but I'm currently not putting my eggs in that basket, as you say. do you say that? I think you say that like that.
I hate American saying or English sayings like eggs in a basket. It's just a stupid saying. Like beat around the bush. Who walks around beating around the bushes? No one.
Drunk people.
Well, I think that's the idea, but okay.
Anyway, I'll just shut up and let you guys talk.
Okay, another question about your story. You go with the strong main character idea. Do you plan on knocking him down a bit more, or are you gonna just follow along, not making him struggle, like apparently you did?
Honestly, I'm afraid if I'm gonna make him weak, my fans will kill me, because I have the feeling if you're messing too much with the status quo, people don't really like it. But it's still my story, and so far people seem to like it, so I hope they continue to trust me with the way I'm gonna write the story. And I'm not sure if I can answer that without spoiling anything, but I'm not gonna make him a wimp. I don't like wimpy MCs, and I don't like reading about them, and I think most people would agree with that. I will also not make his journey easy one. I think struggle is important in a story. Without struggle, there is no excitement, and I won't make him a guy who can beat 3,000 people by himself and then just has nothing more to do because he can waffle stomp everything around him. I won't do that either. I'm gonna make his journey a challenging one. But because it has to be an exciting one. That's what I think. But not necessarily a tragic one.
So, difficulties, but not anything impossible. Not tragic.
It has difficulties. It just stays the same, I'd say. I mean, like it is now. It's difficult. For example, the last chapter ended on a pretty bad cliffhanger. And this level of difficulty, I think I'm gonna keep. I mean, I think it works. people seem to like it, and yeah, I think it's okay.
Here's one for you, just because I want to make you sweat. Like, I know you guys and most of the viewers mostly know what's coming, or at least about the coming cycle bump. Now, as you might know, we will have a new rating system coming in, and as things are, you probably will fall out of the first place. How you feel about that?
Yeah, I actually know about that, but I mean, you can't help it. I've been on the top for a really long time, and I'm really glad about that. I'm really grateful to all my fans who put me up there. And every streak has to end at some point. Of course, I'd like it if I had stayed on top, but I think a lot of you have to update a lot to stay fresh. Yeah, you know, and I just don't have the time. And if I could put more time into it, I think I would feel a little more saddened about it that I couldn't keep the first place. But it's just the way things are. You can't keep it up forever. There will be better stories. There will be more exciting ones. There will be better writers. That's just the way things are. And if those better writers, I'm not saying they are currently. I'm just in theory.
Indeed.
Because
our hope is that better writers appear. That's my
yeah,
hope.
exactly. That's our all hope because you want to read good stuff. And
Yeah.
I could say it. Yes, I'm so it sucks so hard that I'm gonna lose number one, and it's not necessarily true because when I lose number one, usually there is a cool story I can read. I mean, and then there's a good author I can learn from. Could think of it that way. But of course, I'd like to keep number one. But honestly, with my current update time, it's just impossible. And I'm glad if I can update once every 2 weeks, and that's just not gonna cut it anymore. The current RoyalRoadL where people update partially every day or every 2 or 3 days, and I just can't keep up with that. I know I'm old. I'm just slow.
So, please ask.
Oh, I was
Ask
just
away,
gonna ask,
Rachel.
how long are your chapters usually?
They started out pretty short, at 3,000-4,000 words. Then they got longer and longer at around chapter 18 or so. So I think they peaked at over 10k, over 10,000 words, and that was just ridiculous. So I'm currently writing around 5,000 words.
Do you plan on continuing like those? Well, there's like a lot of people on the railroad write really short chapters and update really fast. That's That's a strategy. Do you plan on maybe pursuing that strategy?
No, not with my current fiction because I think the way I write my story, it's a little bit on the heavy side. You know, the atmosphere plays an important role in the story. It's a little bit darker, and if you have stories like that, the world, I mean, and if you have stories like that, you need to put your readers in the mood for the story. That's at least what I try to do with my choice of words, choice of adjectives, of description, of writing generally. And to put my readers in this kind of mood, I need a certain amount, certain length. If I wrote 1,000 words chapters or 2,000 words, until when my readers got in the mood, the chapter would be done already, and that's just not gonna cut it. I want to give the readers a good experience, and I'd rather lose my top spot than to reduce the quality of my fiction. That's just gonna have to do. I mean, yeah, I won't cut down on quality. I'd rather lose the top spot.
So, I remember that a while ago you were having problems trying to find a proofreader for your story. Did you find someone already?
No, not a permanent
Do you want
one.
to make a public appeal for everyone to become
Uh,
a proofreader?
sure. Currently, I'm doing it like this. When I'm having a chapter done, or I go on the chat and ask if anybody wants a proofread. That's how I currently do it. For example, last time Requisition did it. Uh, then another guy, I think it was called. Sorry if I don't have the name right. I think it was called Meister Johnny. did once overall proofread for my stories, and then a guy called Poro Feed or Poro Fight or something like that did it once over again, and so I'm. It's not like I don't have my stories proofread yet. Some just happens a lot later sometimes. Like the last proofread overall was like last month after my stories were out, like yeah, almost a year. But if people would like to proofread, sure, shoot me a PM. Why not? Um, but I'm a little bit careful with proofreaders because I think finding typos and such, that's not really that's not the only issue that a proofreader should fixate on. And if the proofreader isn't familiar with the style of the author, I think it can be pretty difficult because I personally use sometimes fragmented sentences to get to the point, to make a stronger point in something, and it's not necessarily grammatical correct, but you have to know it. You have to know the rules of writing to break them, and a proofreader should know that, I think. So it's difficult. I know I'm asking a lot from proofreaders, but I'm asking a lot from myself for when you write these stories. So it's often difficult to find a proofreader. I'm not even often. I'm discussing several points when I have a proofreader. It takes a while to discuss those things, but I also think if that proofreader could learn the same amount I do from him, because I think it's very important to exchange pointers about writing. So sure, if you want to proofread, shoot me a PM. But I hope you have certain knowledge. I mean, I don't want to sound cocky. You don't have to be an English master's degree student or something. I mean, just be cool author.
Just
That's
good
fine.
English.
Yeah, good English. For example, as I said last time, the guy who shoots questions all the time, Rek, with precision, he's a really good proofreader. I had him read the last chapter, and I haven't had a single complaint on the comments. And I talked with him a lot about different points of the chapter. That was pretty good, for example. Yeah, so a proofreader has to be somewhat dedicated. I had a lot of proofreaders who did one chapter or half a chapter. I'm grateful toward them too, but that's not really something I'm looking for. No, it's great. I'm grateful. I sent a PM, sent the message in the chat. Hey, read through it once, fix the typos, and thanks. That's great too, but a real proofreader would be nice because, I'm still not a native speaker, and despite my progress in the language and my limited understanding of the English grammar, I'm far from flawless. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you everyone for coming. We are ending up here because it's been an hour already. Storm, do you want to say something to say goodbye and everyone off?
I'd like to say two things, if that's okay. One thing to generally authors, because I've been asked this question every now and then. What to do, what advice I have generally for writers. You should maybe ask this more experienced author than me. General advice, but I still like to give it for those who want to listen. The advice I would give to authors is just to write. It sounds stupid, but you can talk about stories, you can talk about character development, about grammar, about dialogue and world building, but in the end you have to write all the more the better. Currently I unfortunately don't have much time to write, but if I could, I would write every day for a few hours, just so I could improve, just so I could put my story on paper, because it's not just the enjoyability of writing. For many, it's the enjoyability of writing that's important. But for me personally, it's not about writing. It's about telling a story. It's not about the money. It's about sending a message, something like that.
I just love that as well.
And yeah, it's about the story for me. And writing in that sense is just a tool. But to be a good writer, to be a good craftsman, I think you have to sharpen that tool. You have to improve it. And you can only tell. I mean, I often see comments and reviews and such that say you don't have to improve your grammar, you don't have to improve your style. As long as the plot is good, I'm gonna stick to it. And sure, it's enjoyable to read, but I think to really tell a good story, you have to have the tools to do it. You have to know the rules of writing. And even if you break them, especially if you break the rules of writing, there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to know them. You have to know the rules: show, don't tell. You have to know the rules. Write what you know or what you want to know. You have to know the rule. Don't start sentences with participles, for example. That's no rule. But you can break every rule in the book as long as you know how to and why you're doing it. Yep, that's what I want to say to writers. Right, and something more to my fans that I'm all of you out there. I think they're currently listening. 12 people, yay! I want to thank them for sticking with me for now almost a year. I mean, it's like 9 months now. Not quite, but still. And I hope you continues to stick with me. And I'm sorry to not write as much as you probably would like to read. But I promise I'll continue to deliver a story that's as good as possible and to put my all into improving. Yeah, that's what I would like to say. Thank you. And thank you for having me on this show.
For coming, actually. And that's it, guys. This is our first Hangout, and actually the first official Hangout.
The first real one. The first one was just a test drive, basically.
Not tryout, but. So thank you, everyone. I'll see you all next time. Hit us on chat or RoyalRoadL, I don't know.
Somewhere.
And yeah, see ya.